start getting the word out. So today I want to start a little bit from the beginning because I know you are all familiar with honeybees and the bee life cycle, but wasps are a little bit different, and hornets are not, hornets are wasps, but not all wasps are hornets. So wasps, hornets, bees, a lot of other insects, they belong to the order Hymenoptera, and that means membranous wings. So all of these insects here, they belong to the order Hymenoptera. And so this will include your ants, your bees, your wasps and hornets. And then there are also a couple sawflies and horntails that are tree pests or horticulture pests. They're not stinging for people. But if you look at, this is just a very abbreviated kind of form of, classifying some of these insects, the hymenopterans. When we talk about wasps, there are in this, specific superfamily where bees are over here. And then when we go a little bit further and talk about hornets, these are in the genus Vespa. And so even though this is, we call it the bald-faced hornet, it is actually, in fact, a yellow jacket. And so again, all hornets are wasps, but not all wasps are hornets. But generally, people call things hornets when they're super big. And so we got a lot of calls because anything super big was thought that it was going to be that Asian giant hornet. And I just want to show you here, the European hornet. This is also a non-native hornet. It's the only other hornet that we have that's actually established here in the United States. And it has been here for a long time, but it's really only found in specific places. It's very mainly in the East. And if you're in Nebraska like I am, I don't get sightings or nests of the European hornet or the bald-faced hornet. So that is one of the reasons why we are, we are not at threat for them naturally coming this way. So hymenopterans undergo complete metamorphosis, right? So the egg, larvae, pupa, and adult. And another way to look at this when we look at the big picture through the season, so social wasps have annual colonies. So unlike honeybees, right? They're only going to live 1 year, this colony. So they will establish in the early spring. So a fertilized queen will come out of hiding sometimes, and this picture is an Asian giant hornet, but this is basically true for all of our wasps, like paper wasps and yellow jackets, and these hornets. So these fertilized queens will hide over winter. Sometimes it's in a mailbox, in a chimney. Sometimes it's together even. You'll find a cluster of them. People will find them like in their homes sometimes. And they think it's a nest, but these are overwintering queens. They come out, they're looking for a place to found a nest. So they're going to start a nest, and basically she does all the work herself. She'll make the nest and lay the eggs and take care of the brood until it's large enough. And when it's big enough, and the workers that are all female are going to emerge, and they're going to start foraging for her when she becomes the egg layer. And then the nest will reach a peak population sometime late summer. In the fall, queens will produce drones or males, and also future queens. And then mating will occur. The males will die. Some females will survive, and then they will overwinter. Sometimes the unfertilized queens overwinter as well, but they don't found the new nest the following year. So that is basically their life cycle and the stages that they go through the year. And so this is why, if you think back to any wasp nest that you may have around your home, paper wasps or yellow jackets, it's going to be, you may see one early on building a nest, but later in the summers when it seems like they multiply overnight, and they may be a problem. And this is very similar to the Asian giant hornet. So paper wasps, we know that they have this one-tiered nest. So it looks like an umbrella. They're also called umbrella wasps. The nest it's open. The cells are open, and they're attached with a petiole or a stalk to sheltered under or overhang. We have a lot of different paper wasps throughout the US. Yellow jackets, they've got several tiers, and then their nest is surrounded or enclosed in this envelope. And this is an underground yellow jacket nest, but they can also be aerial nests and also be in wall voids and different open areas. So here's just some examples of paper wasp nests that I've taken. We've got the European paper wasp that nests in like pipes and tubes and utility places anywhere, basically. So this is what they look like. We've got all different kinds. And then yellow jackets, this is an attic. So that nest is enclosed in this envelope. We've got ones in the ground, and we've got aerial nests. So that's the ones we see normally. And then this is the Asian giant hornet, and it is the largest hornet in the world, Vespa mandarinia. It weighs like 2 to 3.5 grams. Head very large, orange, prominent eyes. A lot of muscles and crushing jaws. And if you look at their wingspan, it can be up to 3 inches. They're 2 inches long. They're a little bit bigger than the cicada killers that we see often, but they're very large. Their stinger is not barbed, so they can sting repeatedly like other wasps. It is said to be pretty painful, but not really, necessarily more toxic. It's just that they can inject more venom, and that's what a lot of the problem is. But they are known in their native land in Asia as the Japanese hornet, the yak killer, and the giant sparrow bee. So again, we have a lot of different common names throughout. There is an Asian hornet. So if you talk to people in Europe who have invasive hornets, they have the Asian hornet, which is Vespa velutina, and they are also a pest of honeybees. But I also want to say that not only do these Asian giant hornets prey on honeybees, but they prey on other insects too. So they are not just out to murder honeybees. It's just that it's good protein, and they're easy targets. And so this is why, but they do eat other insects as well. Their natural foraging range is like 1/2 mile to 1.25 miles. And it's thought, in Japan, that they never forage more than 5 miles for food. But, that's what we can go off of because we are still learning more about them. Their nests, previous to what they did end up finding in Washington State, were always underground. And this is a picture from like their native habitat. And this is actually what it looked like inside the log or the tree that they did find of the colony they eradicated in October. So you can see it does not have an enclosed envelope with the tiers, but they've got several tiers. I think it's usually around 5 tiers. And this was very, I guess, surprising to the scientists that they were found in this tree. This look-alike chart was put together by Nebraska Entomology, and this is just showing comparisons of size and shape and color of some of the things that we do see in Nebraska that were mistaken and killed because people thought they were Asian giant hornets. But you can, clearly see some of the differences here. That's available if you guys are interested. When it comes to the pain, I don't know if you guys have heard of Justin Schmidt. He was like the king of sting. He wrote this book I've got here. It's The Sting of the Wild. And he's been on different shows. And I mean, he's not Coyote Peterson, but he's a legitimate researcher. Here he is when he was in Nebraska. But he has a very poetical description of all the different stings he's gone through, and he wasn't purposely stung. It was just for part of his work, but he really talked about each one of these stings. He did admit that he had not been stung by Vespa mandarinia, so he didn't really have a pain index number. But from what I've read, the venom toxicity is comparable to other hornets that we have when it was tested against lab mice. And so when we talk about LD50s or toxicity, the honeybee venom is actually more toxic than hornets. But the Asian giant hornet, because they can sting repeatedly and because they can deliver 10 times the amount of venom, this is why it is more hazardous. So if one is to be stung, they do have very, the the same steps that you would go through. If you've got an allergic to the venom, then it can be deadly, but a lot of times it's going to be localized pain. And if you are in Washington State, this is the printout or that they want you to call. But this was what it was described like: to be stung by an Asian giant hornet, stabbed by a red hot needle, severe swelling and aching for a few days. So it's not something you want to go through, but they are not aggressive to people. And that's what I do want to stress. But it's similar to a lot of the other wasps, right? If they are going to be defensive, if you're close to a nest, and then later in the fall, late summer, when they're defending food, it's going to be, they can be aggressive, but normally they're not going to be. So the reason why this is so important, especially to beekeepers, is because only a few Asian giant hornets are needed to completely wipe out a honeybee hive. And this can take, as little as just a few hours. So there are 3 phases, they call it, of this attack. So the first is going to be a hunting phase. So that's when a worker goes out to find a honeybee hive, and they will attack a bee, and they pretty much take its thorax and they make a meatball out of it, and they take it back. The second phase, which doesn't occur often, but that's the phase that everyone is really worried about, especially if you're in Washington State and you have bee hives, is the slaughter phase. And this is just when they rapidly attack and kill a lot of the bees in there. And then the last phase is going to be occupation phase. So after they wipe out a lot of the workers, that's when they start devouring the brood and taking that brood back to the nest. And this is where I'm going to show you a video. This is not my video. This is a YouTube video, bees versus hornets, and I hope it's right on the spot. When a honeybee hive faces off with... Can you hear that? Okay, just check. Asian giant hornets, it takes just one recon mission to start a war. When a single hornet scout spots a beehive, she marks it with a pheromone and then returns with a hit squad. These giants are the world's largest hornet, 5 times the size of the average honeybee. And they're armed with a deadly venom. Their sting feels like a hot nail being driven into your flesh. Thousands of defenders pour from the hive, ready to give their lives in its defense. But these European honeybees have no way to stop the onslaught. A single hornet can kill as many as 40 bees a minute. Just 30 of them can annihilate a colony of 30,000 bees in a few hours. It isn't a battle. It's a massacre. The ground is thick with the remnants of their victims. And the enemy penetrates into the inner sanctum of the hive. With the hive's defenders laid to waste, the hornets gorge themselves on the spoils of war. But honey isn't the main prize. Instead, they carry away the honeybee larvae and pupae, which will feed their young for weeks. European honeybees may fight valiantly, but they haven't evolved any defenses against these giant invaders. Within nature's intricate web of checks and balances, there is a place for payback. These too are honeybees,
They made their hive in a hollow tree. They too are caring for their young. But these are native Japanese honeybees, and they're not quite as defenseless as their European cousins. They have evolved a secret weapon against the giant hornet. One they may need often in this deadly season. This hornet is the advance guard of an attack force the bees could never withstand. But this time, the bees set a trap. They want the hornet inside, and the hornet obliges. The scout's main task is to mark the hive with the telltale pheromone so that her sisters can find it later. But the native honeybees know her game. By swinging their abdomens to and fro, they signal their strategy to one another. The bees hold off until the last possible moment. And then, as if on one mind, they swarm. The hornet is engulfed by hundreds of bees. But they don't sting the intruder. Instead, as revealed by thermal photography, they all begin to vibrate, gradually raising their collective temperature to 117 degrees Fahrenheit. Japanese honeybees can tolerate a temperature of 118 degrees. Their victim's upper limit is 115. The hornet scout is slowly roasted alive.
Okay, I'll go back to sharing this. So as you can see, the native or the Japanese honeybees, because they've evolved with the Asian giant hornets, they're able to do this. And there's, we wish that the European honeybee could do that, but they are not able to do that. Here's just some details from that. So Apis cerana is the Japanese honeybee, and from what I've read, they are not something that you want to bring to the United States. They're not equipped for this environment. They're not as good. And then they will also bring with them two other mites that we do not want here, because we've got enough problems with the Varroa mite. But because they form that ball and it heats it up, but it's not completely like, there is going to be deaths from that. So those honeybees actually, give their lives. So 25% of the honeybees are said to be killed or injured during that heating ball. But it also raises that level of carbon dioxide so that hornet can die. So what honeybee keepers have done is they've tried to use traps for these invasive hornets. So there are some, like this one I found on a site in the UK, for putting that on their hives to protect their honeybees from the Asian hornet, the Vespa velutina. But other traps that they've tried to use are because when the female is looking in the spring for sap, she'll like to feed on like oak tree sap, that they've started trying to put sticky traps out to try to catch the emerging queens. The difficulty with that is to try to trap the hornets without trapping any other things that are looking for something sweet. Then there are different hive attachments. You can look those up, but it's to let the honeybees in, but not let the hornets in, because to try to mechanically keep them out. And then also there are bait bottle traps, similar to like the yellow jacket traps that you can buy commercially, but you need a bigger trap because the yellow jackets are very small, and so they aren't going to fit into the entry holes that they have in the commercial traps. And this is why in Washington State, the residents and the Washington State Department of Ag, they were making the bottle traps. So for these bottle traps, it's a large plastic bottle, and it was baited with orange juice and rice wine. So the alcohol in the rice wine discourages the honeybees. So they, really had to think about how they can trap just the hornet alone. And they had this out to a lot of, the community in the area of in Washington, where they did find, they were having reports and detections of the Asian giant hornet. So you have to secure it to a tree 6 to 9 feet up, but not higher than that, and then to try to space them 50 feet apart. And so participants in this program in Washington State, they really made this huge commitment. They weren't allowed to start until July, when it was going to be high activity. And they had to obtain their own materials, maintain the traps for 17 weeks, and they had to log the traps and map them, but log all the specimens they collected throughout that 17 weeks. So it was a pretty time consuming, and I'll show you some of the data from that. But they had to be replaced. The bait had to be replaced each week. So considering going back to that life cycle and the season of the Asian giant hornet, this is that image. But it's important to know, when they found the hornets, a couple of them last year, in, I think it was like November, people didn't know why they didn't start trapping. Well, it's because of the life cycle. So for wasps, you have to wait. And so that's why they waited on it, did some trapping, and they were ready to go, by this time in the summer to start trapping. And then they really wanted that deadline to be, the end of September, before, the new queens were emerging. And so when you look at the danger zone for honeybees, it's going to be this time of year, right? So when it comes to IPM and pest management for those Asian giant hornets, this is the time where you're going to want to, put those traps on your hives. And they did have some, I guess, hives as like bait, and they would trap around those hives, hoping that maybe the Asian giant hornet would be found. And what the goal was to find the hornet and then catch it alive, and then follow it back, find the nest, and then eradicate the nest. And so that was the whole goal. So early on, let's see, when they started trapping over in July, and then they started finding some, and this is where kind of the story goes. So when people would put out their traps, there's a Facebook group. So if you're on Facebook, you can follow along. It's a public group, but it's the Asian Giant Hornet Watch. And basically, when I was on Facebook, this is just where I went. It was always updated, and the Washington State Department of Agriculture would put things on there. They were really good with updating the public, and it was where a lot of the people that were also trapping were able to communicate with each other what they're seeing, and to kind of smash myths and false things right away. But I think, initially there were, said to be 400, 500 traps deployed in Washington State, so that they had a good coverage and they were able to map that. The first trap caught Asian giant hornet was found in Birch Bay, Washington State, at the end of July, I believe. And if you go to this, they released a lot of press releases, because the press was always wanting to ask questions and write stories about it. So I watched all of these and found out like what they were doing. But along the way, people would see them, they would take pictures, they would submit them, and there's still probably going to be processing some of their samples. So they were told to either take a picture or to trap them. And so that's kind of what they did. And so this is some of the information. So as of today, the Washington State Department of Ag, they had 914 traps So that's what they had put out. And then for citizen science or community science, the people that did it, residents on their own, there were like over 1,500 people trapping in the area. And so it was a really great effort. So even though, you know, I can't tell you how much it bothered me to hear, you know, murder hornet every time someone called, that, you know, that media coverage really did help spread the word and get people interested in helping. So what they did after that was they really wanted to catch a live hornet. So they did end up catching one. I think the first one, they tried to glue a radio transmitter on it and the glue didn't work because they got really shiny, hairless bodies, right? So the second time they tied dental floss to the hornet and with a radio tracker. So this is images from what they did, and this is a video when they followed it back with the radio transmitter, and they found that it was nesting in a tree, which they had not expected at all. And so they had a press conference that I watched, and they were saying, okay, we're going to do this at night, you know, on this certain day. And the reason they want to do it at night is because it's safer that way. All the hornets are going to be in the nest. And here's, let's see, the next picture. So, you know, if you saw anything on the news, it looked like E.T. or Among Us or some kind of alien movie. The entomologists and the hornet hunters went out and they found the tree. They wrapped it in plastic, which is what this green stuff is, and they were knocking on the tree. And what they were doing, instead of using, you know, an insecticide, they used a vacuum, and they vacuumed out the colony, as many wasps or hornets as they could. And then after that, they used carbon dioxide gas on the rest of them. And then they rewrapped the tree with plastic, and they were waiting a few days to chop down the tree and then bring it into the lab, which is what, you know, the entomologist Crystalini is doing here, is opening up the log to see what it looked like. And I showed a picture earlier of what that nest ended up looking like. And then the Washington State Department of Ag put together this infographic here to show everybody what actually happened and what they saw. So, you know, it was unexpected, but the nest was, you know, over 8 feet high up into this tree. And then this is what they removed. And so I think if you don't know about wasps and their life cycle, it's really hard to figure out, because when you think of, you know, 190 larvae or, you know, 76 queens, people get very worried. But what happens is, you know, these queens didn't really leave the nest yet. Maybe it was before they even made it. And so they found 9 males and 112 workers, but and then all these, you know, capped. So it was really good timing for them, and you know, they consider this this very successful. So this nest was destroyed in Blaine, Washington. And just as a side note, because I did get a lot of calls on people asking, like, where would you get a suit like that? Those are amazing. You can get these on Amazon. And I actually just put this in my wish list just for safekeeping. I do not need one, but the stinger of an Asian giant hornet is like 1/4 of an inch long, and so it can sting through a regular bee suit. And so this is why no one was attacked aggressively. They actually did not know if this suit worked because nobody was stung. So they really don't have a lot to say about the suits. But you know, when you look at some of the introductions or the specimens that were caught, there is a publication that was published, you know, earlier this year, when they found the Canadian hornet, which was eradicated actually last year on Vancouver Island, and then the hornet that they found in Washington State. And they found through mitochondrial DNA analysis that they were from 2 separate introductions, so they weren't related. So there is a possibility, and pretty, you know, a good likelihood that there are more nests out on the West Coast. They're not able to say if they're established or not, because they don't know how long they've been here or how many there are. And it's just, a lot of it is unknown. But it's thought to be a very slow spread on its own due to the type of life cycle. But they believe that it was probably brought in from shipment containers. Maybe a fertilized queen got in somewhere and then was shipped over, by accident. But they have sequenced the genome, I believe. So they are going to do a lot of more research and trying to find out how it came to be, and how they've been separated from Asia. A big question is what the potential spread is in North America. And so there was a publication about what, the potential for invasions based on climate and habitat, food source. So they found that much of the US in the west and east coasts are suitable habitat for Asian giant hornet, and those parts of Canada that are adjacent to those places if they have food and they have a good habitat. So they prefer warm summers, mild winters, and high rainfall. And so the Great Plains is thought to be a very unlikely place for them, especially since we have the Rocky Mountains in between us and where they are now. They did say that based on their natural, their natural spread, which is not very big, that they could probably spread 68 miles per year. So the worst case scenario would be that they would be found in the western part of Washington and Oregon in, the next 20 years or less. So it's still not known how far and fast queens can fly. So there still is a lot of basic biology in this environment that, entomologists and researchers need to know. But and they're also not sure if they create nests where they actually hibernate or if they emerge and then fly away from that place. So there is a lot of question there. And they're not sure of the odds of actually human assisted spread. So if someone takes, a fertilized queen and brings it to a different place. And so that is one of the things also to think about. So in terms of some of the Asian giant hornet resources, I'm going to tell you about some of the places that you can go to get some great information about these if you want to go down a rabbit hole and need more. So the Washington State Department of Ag has a great website. This is where a lot of this information came from. They also have this National Environmental Review that was, recently updated, and it talks about the impact on the environment. They have a YouTube channel that has a bunch of different things, but they have all of the press releases, they have videos that they took. I'm sure they're going to make a movie somewhere along the line. So they've got a lot of footage and they've been documenting this really well. You can find videos on how to build a bottle trap, but they don't recommend it to anyone who's not in Washington State right now, because you're just going to trap things that are not Asian giant hornet. But they do have a lot of different videos that are interesting. They also have a blog that will go through all the things that they had done, and it just describes, it's got pictures and it's got a kind of like their diary, but it's always very cool to find out what they did. If you're on Facebook, the Washington State Department of Ag's got one, but the one where all the fun stuff is the Asian Giant Hornet Watch. Resources, especially for beekeepers. If you get on that website at the Washington State Department of Ag, they've got like what to do if your hive's being attacked. There's one video, this one right here, that's just what you need to know as a beekeeper. There's instructions again on making the bottle traps. There is if you want to rather listen to one of the scientists talk on a podcast in your ear, you can listen to this Beekeeping Today podcast. This was, I think, before the nest was eradicated, but some good information if you don't feel like reading anymore. And then this one I really like. It's peer reviewed and it's recommended reading. I think it's pretty short, but it's got all the information you need to know as a beekeeper. And with that, hopefully we can get back to chit-chatting, but thank you. This is my information if you want to reach out, and that's my Twitter handle, and then that's my dog. But I had just received when I made this, so many emails about, is this a murder hornet, with a bunch of other dead things, that I just thought I would make my own. But if you have any questions, I will stop sharing and check out the chat, or Judy or Randall can let me know what's going on.
Thanks, Jody. That was awesome. There are a few questions. Hold on, let me scroll. There was a few compliments on Kitty.
Oh, see, and I forgot completely.
Yeah, and some of these questions was kind of answered already. Let's see, Randall, do you see? Oh, is the German yellow jacket an import?
I'm not really sure because it has the name German, you just never know. But we have, I mean, a lot of these are not necessarily considered invasive anymore. They're just part of our ecosystem, right? So it probably wouldn't be considered native, but it wouldn't be considered invasive.
Here's a question. Since we don't know how many colonies are out there. One of the people is asking, will they mate with males from their own colony if they weren't able to attract males out in the wild?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they know for sure because they do find things that are mated, but I don't see why not.
Right.
You know, that could potentially make it more easy for a foundress to start a new colony if she can just produce her own males and then, right? I mean, an unmated female would produce drones.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and with a lot of insect societies, like it doesn't really matter. I mean, you know, when you talk about, oh, well, you put, you know, a couple roaches together and they can create and create and create. So, I mean, at this point, they really just don't know, but I wouldn't say no.
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah, because then that implies that there's possibility that it could accidentally be moved from equipment. And well, I don't know, because if those recruiters, those scouts, are they able to lay eggs? Are they able to found a new colony?
I don't think so.
Or does it have to be
No, I think it's going to have to be like a fertilized queen. But, you know, there was, it's interesting too, because the ones that they could collect, like there's still so many that haven't been processed to find out if it's, like if it was, I mean, I saw some data that was like, you know, male, unmated queen, mated queen, and then it was like unknown. So they couldn't figure out what it was, like the specimens.
Yeah, I admittedly don't know too much about wasps and hornets in biology. Some of it is kind of mirroring some of the wild bee and history traits and things like that, and some of it doesn't. And so it kind of resembles primitively eusocial bumblebees, where they have that annual cycle and the queen that starts a colony up, and then she stays in and everybody else goes out and kind of retrieves it. But I think in a wasp situation, there's multiple queens, right?
Sometimes there are. So it's weird because I don't know if you knock down a certain like a nest when it's being built, like she'll just come back and rebuild, and you can keep knocking it down and she'll go somewhere else. But maybe at a certain point when she can no longer like do all the work, she can try to join another colony. And so it will have like a couple females, but usually one's the primary egg layer.
Yeah, I know, just working with Dr. Amy Toth here, who's like the Polistes wasp expert. It seems like it's a constant kind of battle for dominance. So you have the foundress, and she's the toughest, at least with Polistes. This is with Polistes specifically. You have the foundress, she's the one that gets to lay eggs, she's the toughest. But the other workers that are with her and helping take care of the eggs she's laying, if they ever notice that she seems weak, they can go in and take her out, and then they become the foundress.
Yeah, and they don't look any different. Like they look all the same. It's the males look different, but all like the main, I guess, egg layer, or what you were saying, Randall, like you can't tell
Yeah.
by looking
And
at them.
isn't there also, I think it's in Polistes, but isn't there a lot of like antennae drumming to communicate like dominance too? Like they drum on top of the cappings of their pupae, and they like, I don't know if it's like a drum out, but they dance off, but they drum it out. But there's some kind of form of communication that's more auditory, like vibration and drumming, that's different than honeybees. Because they do the dance, you know, whereas I remember the wasps do some sort of drumming with their antennae.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about wasps just by watching the wasps around the house. And I don't know, it's always just really interesting to me, the social societies. But I think there was a couple other things in here. Okay. What are the actions beekeepers should take when moving hives for pollination to the area that may have them? I mean, I guess if you're in Washington State, that would be where the only place I would really be worried about. And I would probably have a couple traps starting in July out there and see what they've got going on out there. But I would reach out to the Washington State for sure.
I wonder if robbing screens would work, you know, like because the wasps, like the robbers, would want to try to go in the hive directly. Whereas I don't know, but I wonder if the wasps can learn how to work around the side gate of a robbing screen.
Yeah, so some of those traps they have screened, like really fast, it will keep them out. But that's why they will attack the bees when they're coming in and out if it's screened. But over time, they can learn to get out of it. So some of the traps, it's like there's holes on the side and funnels so they can get in and not get out. But then also when they take the bait, I guess they fly straight up. So the different designs that are there, and that one publication's got different, let's see, like different types of traps, you know, that you can put in trees, but let me see. I think, yeah, there's this one, and then there's just some that have like netting or mesh over top, but they said that they can learn to get out of it, and that it gets very expensive to make these. And so it's, you know, it's not, if you are not in that area that has them, it's not going to be economical to do that. Let's see, the option of the fake wasp nest. So I would say there's no truth to that. Just from seeing wasps basically nest right next door to each other, or just paper wasps and yellow jackets together, and yellow jacket nests like within, you know, a few feet.
Do they think that those nests that they typically nest in trees, or do they think that that was atypical?
So they thought that was atypical.
So they would normally nest underground.
Yes.
And if it had been underground, would they have been as successful in retrieving that nest? I mean, it seems like 8 feet down would be kind of.
Yeah, I don't know if it would have been 8 feet down, but I do think, like, usually it's closer to the surface, but I think it would have been harder to, I mean, I think they were pretty lucky that they could wrap it in plastic, but they were planning on doing like vacuuming it out and doing it that way. So I was
wondering if they were going to drown it, or how they would get a tube down to the right place to get, you know, maybe David Attenborough with a small little camera.
Who knows? Like, I'm just waiting for their movie to come out, because like, I know that they had a lot of, you know, media, and they release what they can, but they also have for the press, like a big folder, a box file of all their videos and their pictures that you can use, you know, so they've done a really good job. But this is that one that's in the UK. It doesn't say how much it costs, but I guess they go in here and they're funnels, and then they get trapped, and then you put this under the hive. But
it's almost like a pollen trap.
So is that what it looks like? So I could learn a lot from
a
you.
little bit like a modified one.
The
We have a
bottle
question
trap.
about like a question asking how large or wide are they? For example, we could using a 5/16 inch opening allow the bees to go in and out, but not mice. Could you use the same thing for the Asian giant hornet? Probably. I just put on some mouse guards that have like little holes in it that would definitely keep them out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know what the measurement of their heads are, but
They look huge.
they have giant heads. And that's one of the big differences between the cicada killer wasps and the Asian giant hornet is just like they have giant like heads.
Mhm. Cool. And I think we have another question from Jacob, right? Seems to be a lot of surprises. Have these not been extensively studied where they were native, or is it kind of a silo problem with literature not being easily accessible to English speakers or available in Western research libraries?
So it seems like they do have quite a bit of research of them over there, but I think it's just the different environment and how we're supposed to keep them from honeybees here because they're not evolved. It's just another problem that beekeepers are going to have if they become established. But I mean, and it's like a lot of things that we have that are invasive species is that they're not really pests over there because they know how to they take care of themselves, right? I mean, it's like I have a lot of questions about jumping worms. They're not a problem over there. They're in the prairies. They're not disturbing people's gardens, and here they will be a big problem. So, and I do think they have a lot of scientists that they're working with in Japan that are able to share that information or translate or have that research because they get a lot of videos like they're like, look at this, this was taken in Japan. It's always important for them to say where that video was taken because they do collaborate a lot with the Asian researchers that have been working on the Asian giant hornet. No, doesn't seem like they do.
Really? Even in their native, I mean, they don't have like a bird that
I think
eats
it's
them
the people that like to catch them and either but I don't know. I mean, as a bird, I think that like if I was a bird, like I wouldn't. No, that's too dangerous.
You wouldn't mess with them.
I'm just gonna go for that worm.
Yeah, I was thinking there's
I
gotta
have
be
some
something.
friends. I have some friends that gave me some honey
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
that has the giant Asian hornet in it that came from Japan.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
But I'm not eating
infused with it. It's infused with it, huh?
Yes.
It might give you some like I don't know what it's called, enhancements or whatever. Like evidently, like energy drink.
I think it's decaying. I've had it several years and it just seems to be getting darker where I could see through it before, but I can't see through it anymore.
Yeah.
But you can kind of see it on the bottom there, but yuck. I'm not eating it.
Well, that's
hopefully that was
interesting.
helpful.
Yeah, I mean, like the big old wasps in the tequila shot or the candy, like I remember those, but I don't know if I've seen honey infused solid wasps before. I've seen the little caterpillar soft-bodied insects because you can kind of chew them up and eat them, but yeah.
Hey, maybe that we could start selling honey that's got big hornets in it.
They got a lot of people asking for samples too, and they sent a lot of them to the museums, and I think they said they're gonna pack them up and send them to different universities. So Judy, you might get one.
Cool.
Yay! Yeah, actually, the funny thing is I know of Chris Looney. I don't know him personally, but Steve Shepard was, my master's advisor at Washington State, and the two students that he had previous to when I showed up was two PhD students that graduated. It was Chris Looney and Jamie Strange. And so they graduated at the same time, and it was Doctors Looney and Strange in the lab. And so we heard all about them all the time. But it's awesome to see some of the work that they've been doing. It seems like really exciting stuff. I mean, you got this, motivative topic, because, if I was living in Washington, I would want to trap them too. Thinking,
Oh yeah, I
put a couple of traps out. I want to know if they're in my yard.
I subscribe to their newsletter, and like it's like the first I get an email, and it was like, this is what Washington State Department of Ag, AGH. No, was it? I'm the worst at acronyms. AGH. And then it was like the one day it was like, who wants like to come out to Washington State and become a hornet hunter? Like so much a week where you stay. And I was like, roll over to the husband, like, hey, can I go out to Washington State and trap hornets? He's like, no. All right.
That would have been awesome. Yeah, I think it's an exciting topic. I think it's exciting because their life history is so interesting, and this is a really interesting kind of story and team to follow. But I certainly like to kind of encourage people to learn about it, because then they know that it's really not something that we need to immediately be afraid of. But that was really cool, Jody. Thank you for kind of giving us a nice background of hornets and wasps. And I don't know, Randall, do you have any questions or follow-up?
No, I think she answered all of them. That was really helpful.
Yeah.
I especially the resources, I think I'll be able to use those to share with people when we get more inquiries.
Yeah, I'll send you an email that just has the list of all the links and stuff.
Sure, and then I can share it with the whole Honeybee Happy Hour crew.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it sounds like people are already getting ready to order their own spacesuits.
Do you like that?
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Jody, for being our first guest speaker. It was wonderful. We really enjoyed it. And we'll see you guys all next month. Happy holidays. And Randall, anything else?
Happy
Yeah,
holidays.
that's it, right?
Yeah.
All right. Have a good